The major cities of Europe have long been popular holiday destinations for people from all over the world, many of them offering a rich history and a wonderful array of culture that really does have to be experienced firsthand. Paris, London, Rome and Moscow have always been synonymous with such memorable vacations. However, the one that should always be near the top of anybody's wish list has to be the wonderful city of Vienna. With beautiful architecture, stunning parks, and a cultural heritage beyond compare, take a fascinating journey through Austria's beautiful capital, and magically, the truly splendid delights that await you will appear before your very eyes. Today, Vienna is one of the most magnificent cities you'll ever see, and whether it's the fine architecture, the musical heritage, or the world-renowned art scene, when you look into Vienna's history, you'll discover that its beginnings were rather more humble, because back in 500 BC, it was nothing more than a small Celtic settlement on the river Danube. But within 500 years, the Roman Empire dominated the region, as the all-conquering Italians occupied the settlement and attempted to secure the border along the Danube. Wealth and prosperity began to flow in, and over the centuries there was rapid expansion and growth. Nevertheless, although Austria and Vienna's future was secure, it wasn't really until the mid-15th century that the city really took shape, as the first of the Habsburg dynasties gained control, transforming it into the capital of the Holy Roman Empire. Encouraged by the imperial court of the Habsburgs, musicians, scholars, architects and artists began to flood into the city, creating one of the most cultural centres on the continent. And as magnificent cathedrals, concert halls and palaces began to appear, Vienna was without doubt the place to be. This is not to say that Vienna didn't endure its fair share of hardships over the years, far from it. There were countless invaders who attempted to steal its riches, civil war, plague, and even Adolf Hitler to contend with during World War II. And it is indeed a testament to the city's tenacity that it's here at all. Yet despite all this, classic beauty, the rich history, and the resilience of the people of Vienna have all played a part in this magnificent city's survival, reminding everyone who comes here that this city was once at the heart of a truly beautiful empire. There's something very unique about this city, and without a shadow of a doubt, you'll thoroughly enjoy delving deeper into what Vienna has on offer, because there's so much to see, and as the clock is already ticking, it's definitely time for our tour to begin. With this almost dizzying array of cultural sites, it's hard to know quite where to start, especially as every street you gaze down looks as intriguing and inviting as the next. But where could be better to begin our journey than at the very seat of the Habsburg Empire, the Hofburg Complex? The Habsburgs, beginning with the reign of Rudolf I back in the 13th century, ruled Austria for many centuries, and with such a long-lasting reign, it'll come as no surprise that the Hofburg Complex kept being expanded over the years. Because of this, it now covers a vast area, making it extremely hard to decide where best to start exploring this collection of fascinating buildings. One of the places that most people start from is Nightlife, which you'll find bustling with tourists by day. Traces of a much older empire lie in the Roman ruins at the foot of St. Michael's Gate, which provides the main entrance to the complex. And as the majestic buildings draw your gaze upwards, you'll be rewarded with a view of stunning green domed roofs that crown the elaborate gateway. It's amazing to think that these dramatic structures, which were commissioned by the Emperor Franz Joseph, were built as passageways to the rest of the complex, simply serving to lead us ever onwards around this absolutely amazing collection of buildings. As you can see for yourself, these are some of the most glorious sights imaginable, and the best way to enjoy this area is on foot, wandering wherever your fancy takes you, while all the while trying to soak up as much of the regal atmosphere as possible. And what's more, the surrounding streets of the Hofburg Quarter are also filled with beautiful properties, built by the nobility of ages past in their eagerness to be as close as possible to the centre of imperial power. The area is rich with splendid architecture, statues and fountains, and it's not difficult to imagine these streets resonating with the clatter of horse-drawn carriages transporting the Austrian nobility about their business. The entire Hofburg Quarter is a great reminder of the magnificence of Vienna during the heyday of the Habsburgs, and this royal dynasty's reign actually continued right through until the creation of the Republic of Austria in 1918. At the edge of Nightlife is the coal market, where you'll find some wonderful coffee and pastry shops, and few cities can rival Vienna's devotion to both. The Viennese have such a wide variety of ways of preparing coffee, they've developed their own specific vocabulary to tell the waiter exactly how they'd like it made. And there can be no disputing the Austrian skill when it comes to creating cakes and confectionery. Dimel Conditore is one of the city's most famous pastry shops, having stood in the coal market for over 2 centuries, and no doubt, down through the years, it's played host to the noblest of visitors. And what better way could there be to end our wanderings around the Hofburg Quarter than to enjoy some light refreshment in one of the shop's ornately decorated rooms? From the coal market, you can walk through the Hofburg Complex to find the greener surroundings of the Burgarten, which lies just outside the ornate palaces. This delightful park was opened to the public in 1918, and here you'll be able to make the acquaintance of one of Vienna's best-loved characters, his statue standing proudly above the landscaped lawns. Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is probably the most well-known composer of classical music of all time, and in the 18th century, the theatres and opera houses of Europe were filled with his elegant symphonies and passionate operas. although brought up in Salzburg, Mozart, as a child prodigy, was adored by the Habsburgs and was frequently called upon to play for the Empress Maria Theresa and her entourage at the Royal Schönbrunn Palace in Vienna. As a young man, not surprisingly, Mozart moved to Vienna, and here he wrote some of his most beautiful music, including The Magic Flute and The Marriage of Figaro. This memorial statue to the great maestro, adorned with playful cherubs and an array of musical instruments, is a perfect way to remember the composer whose music made the world a better place. And you won't travel far in Vienna without finding evidence of Mozart's presence. But we'll discover more about him in just a little while. For the people of Vienna, appreciating their vibrant heritage is extremely important, which is why you'll discover so many different museums and galleries, seemingly in every street you walk down. Heading roughly in a southerly direction from the Burggarten, there appear to be more cultural buildings than ever, and this is because we've reached the district of Vienna known as the Museum Quartier. But before we even set foot in the Museum Quarter, there are galleries aplenty around its outskirts that are equally worthy of your attention. Take, for example, the wonderful Kunsthistorische Museum, which is most definitely not to be missed. The Kunsthistorische is the fourth largest art gallery in the world, and when you stand in front of its imposing facade, this isn't hard to believe. When you get inside, the artwork you'll see is equally as impressive, and with artists of the calibre of Bruegel and Vermeer on display, the only downside is the fact that you might lose track of time if you happen to be on a short city break. Even so, the Viennese were not content with having just one of these amazing constructions, and built a twin structure on the opposite side of the square. If you turn around, you'll see that it looks identical in almost every way, and you could be excused for thinking you were seeing double until you go inside and discover it is in fact Vienna's Natural History Museum. Back out in the square, the Maria Theresa Platz, you'll find a statue of the Habsburg Empress who gave this place its name. Surrounded by her generals and advisors, Maria Theresa is actually clasping the pragmatic sanction of 1713, which made it possible for a woman to succeed to the Austrian throne, evidently something that was very dear to her heart. After the classical artworks of the Kunsthistorische Museum, for anyone in search of something rather more contemporary, the Museum Quarter has a great deal more to offer. There are modern art museums, centres for dance, production studios, music halls, and wonderful spaces for open-air events. This 60,000 square metre district really does have something to suit every taste, and is the 8th largest cultural area in the world. You could literally spend days in this district, visiting the various cultural buildings, and to choose just a few to highlight is a very tough job indeed. Every single museum has something unique to offer, so the best advice has to be to follow your own personal taste and give yourself as much time as possible to make the most of the area. But it's not just within the museum quarter that you'll be able to find such cultural delights, and if you head further north, you'll discover a location that's incredibly important, both culturally and scientifically, to the people of the entire world. Situated at number 19 Burggasse is a museum that looks very much like any other typical 20th century Viennese townhouse. However, between the dates of 1891 and 1938, this was the home of the father of modern psychology, Sigmund Freud. It was within these walls that Freud developed his theories on the subconscious, presenting psychoanalysis as a much more sympathetic therapy for the treatment of mental illness. Inside, the museum is laid out just as the house would have been in Freud's day, and you can even see the couch which he used for his consultations. For many of us, a little of Freud's psychoanalyses is likely to go a long way, and after such complexities of thought, it's probably a good time to go in search of the much older inner city of Vienna for a change of scene. Here, taking pride of place, you'll find the truly beautiful Stephensdom, that many refer to as St. Stephens Cathedral. The locals describe the cathedral as the soul of the city, and when you wander around the outside of this stunning building, it's easy to see why this is the case. The first thing that you'll notice is the incredible mosaic roof. Not only are the 250,000 separate glazed tiles a joy to look at, they're also a symbol of the nation's trials and tribulations of the more recent past. This is because, towards the end of the Second World War, the roof was almost completely destroyed by fire, but refusing to let this much-loved landmark fall into a state of disrepair, the people of Austria donated the money needed to restore their beloved cathedral to its former glory. In fact, ever since the 9th century, when it's thought that the first church stood here, the cathedral has been embellished constantly. Everywhere you look, there are yet more wonderful details to see, from the imposing majesty of the 13th century twin towers of the heathens, to the fine stonework and the sculptured reliefs. In fact, the Stephensdom really is a marvel of design, and a perfect centrepiece for this city of so many parts. And if you've the energy to climb the 246 steps to the observation platform, you'll be rewarded with a breathtaking view of the roof and Vienna far below. After the splendour of the Stephensdom, a quiet stroll down the narrow lanes to the street of Domgasse will bring you to a much more modest part of the city. And at number 5, you'll come upon the rather unassuming, yet culturally important, Figaro House. The name of this house may have already given you a clue as to who originally resided here, along with his family, between 1784 and 1787. And if you haven't already guessed, we have, of course, once again found a Viennese location, which is significant because of Mozart. The reason for it being called Figaro House is after Mozart's masterpiece, The Marriage of Figaro, which was written here, where Mozart spent the happiest years of his all-too-short life. Soaking in the atmosphere around the Figaro House is fascinating, and if you have the time, you'll find that the first floor has now been turned into a delightful museum, where you'll discover Mozart's own story is as captivating as the music he wrote. One of the greatest joys of wandering around an unknown city is stumbling almost completely by accident on some of its hidden gems. A perfect example is just a short distance away from Figaro House, namely the charming bookshop at number 8 Domgasse. And after exploring the bookshop, if you're ready for another refreshment break, as you would expect in Vienna, you'll not have to go far to find a suitable establishment to cater for your needs. And a visit to the Haas tea rooms will be every bit as delightful as the one made to Demel Conditore. Here, nestled in the shadow of the beautiful Stephensdom, there's another superb array of cakes and confections on offer to go with your tea or coffee. And even if your waistline might suffer a little, there's plenty more walking to be done on this tour of Vienna. A few minutes' walk will take you to the Hohe Market, where you'll find another great Viennese landmark, which should at least help you to keep track of the time. The magnificent anchor clock was designed in 1911 by the much-loved artist Franz von March. Although the clock, with its fine metal work and vibrant colours, is a joy to look at any time, it's when it strikes the hour that it really comes to life. When you hear the chimes, you'll see a famous figure from Vienna's history march past the clock face, and if you're very lucky or patient and find yourself here at 12 o'clock, you'll be treated to the sight of 12 different figures stepping into the limelight. Marcus Aurelius, Rudolf IV, and Mozart are among the notable figures, but be warned, to work out who all 12 are takes either a lot of time or an encyclopedic knowledge of this wonderful city's past. Then wandering on a little further north of the Hohe Market, you'll find yourself in the narrow streets of Vienna's old Jewish district. Here, along the tangle of cobbled lanes, you get an evocative sense of Vienna's past, especially if you stumble into the tiny Ruprecht Square. Here, hidden amongst the bars and restaurants, stands Vienna's oldest surviving church, named after the patron saint of salt merchants, Saint Rupert. Ruprechtskirche dates back to the 11th century, and at the foot of its stone tower you can see the saint himself holding a tub of salt, which would have been a much treasured commodity in the Middle Ages. Outside the enclosed square, the cobbled streets are filled with reminders of a once bustling Jewish ghetto. Kosher restaurants, bars and synagogues line the streets, and many of the buildings still house Jewish businesses. The main square, Judenplatz, lies at the heart of the district, and stands testament to the resilience of the Austrian Jews down through the ages. Although when history speaks of the persecution of the Jews, images of the Holocaust and the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime and Adolf Hitler will be the first to spring to mind, The problems began much earlier. In Vienna, the many Jews who'd settled in this city since the 12th century were almost driven out by the terrible campaign of Duke Albrecht V, which came to a head in 1421. It's therefore doubly poignant that the Holocaust Memorial is located here, commemorating the Austrian Jews murdered during World War II. And you'll also find a statue to Ephraim Lessing here, the German poet, playwright and philosopher from the 18th century, who advocated enlightenment and tolerance, adding to the quiet air of reconciliation and remembrance that dominates Judenplatz today. Nevertheless, it's impossible to go far in Vienna without the legacy of World War II being evident, and the same is true of our next destination, the Altes Rathaus, the city's oldest town hall. In Vienna, even the administrative buildings have been aesthetically crafted and cared for, although in this case, the Altes Rathaus hasn't actually been used as a town hall since 1883. Behind the walls, festooned with ornamental ironwork, and beyond the Andromeda Fountain, where Perseus is heroically rescuing the beauteous maiden of Greek mythology from a sea monster, you can find another tale of extreme heroism in the form of the Austrian Resistance Archive, which documents the resistance to Nazism before and during the Second World War. Although many Austrians did not oppose Hitler's takeover of their nation in 1938, there were those who fiercely resisted his advances. And here you can visit a fascinating exhibition on the first floor, which is a telling tribute to their brave struggle. But Hitler wasn't the only invader with his sights set on Vienna, because in the 19th century, Napoleon Bonaparte did all in his power to conquer the Habsburg Empire, determined to include Austria in his plans for world domination. This lovely church, which stands on the edge of the Jewish district, was used as an arsenal for Napoleon's troops when he reached Vienna during the war against Austria in 1809, and required significant restoration later in the century. The sacred Maria am Gestade, or Our Lady on the Steps, is a wonderful example of Viennese Gothic architecture, but hardly an appropriate place to house soldiers and horses. As the 180-foot-high steeple invites you to take a closer look at the stairs to the main entrance, you'll see 15th century sculptures of saints and prophets patiently awaiting worshippers. Amongst them, you'll find St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist. If you have the time to explore the interior, you'll find it a delightfully peaceful experience, whatever may have happened here in ages past. Now, it may come as a surprise to many of us because Napoleon is forever associated with his first wife, the Empress Josephine, that he married the Austrian princess Marie-Louise and made our next destination, the magnificent Schönbrunn Palace just outside Vienna, one of his homes in 1810. Josephine had agreed to a divorce in order for Napoleon to marry the much younger Austrian princess, having failed to provide Napoleon with the son and heir he so desperately desired. although Marie-Louise obliged and Napoleon II was born in 1811, his father's empire was soon overthrown, and Napoleon Sr. died in exile on the island of St. Helena in 1821. Ironically, it was here at the Schönbrunn Palace that Napoleon II died of tuberculosis at the age of 21, having only outlived his father by 11 years. Despite the fact that the Schönbrunn Palace is a couple of miles out of the city centre, it's well worth making the journey, especially as it's been said that the beauty of this royal residence surpasses that of the Palace of Versailles in Paris. But it isn't only Napoleon's story that makes Schönbrunn worthy of your attention, because this much-loved summer residence of the Habsburgs, dating back to the 16th century, has a great many tales to tell. We've already made the acquaintance of Empress Maria Theresa, and this lady, perhaps centuries ahead of her time, made the greatest impact on Schönbrunn, extensively altering the palace to her own taste in the 18th century. She spent the summers here with her huge royal entourage, numbering over 1,500 people, not to mention her husband, Francis I, 5 sons and 11 daughters, the youngest of which went on to become the most notorious and last ever Queen of France, Marie Antoinette. Sent to France as a young girl, Marie Antoinette struggled to make her arranged marriage to the future Louis XVI work. And when the French Revolution attacked the excesses of the aristocracy, both she and her husband quite literally lost their heads. It is indeed fortunate that there was no similar revolution in Austria, because as you enter the palace, with its 1,441 rooms and halls, you'll certainly get a taste of the extravagance enjoyed by the imperial family. As you walk up the blue staircase, your eyes will be drawn heavenwards to the most stunning of Italian frescoes, and this is only the beginning of a truly mesmerizing journey through Vienna's regal past. At the top of the stairs, a doorway to the left will lead to one of the most lavishly decorated dining halls you could possibly imagine. The Great Gallery is breathtaking. Its walls are adorned with beautiful white and gold stucco decoration. Elegant crystal mirrors, and its richly painted ceiling is quite literally dripping with glittering chandeliers, which makes this one of the most magnificent Rococo interiors in existence. Measuring over 40 metres in length, the room must have been the perfect setting for sumptuous balls and lavish banquets, and clearly demonstrates the immense wealth of the Habsburg Empire. Interestingly, in more recent times, the room was the setting for the legendary meeting between President John F. Kennedy and the Russian head of state, Nikita Khrushchev, at the height of the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1961. Each room holds its own special story, and the Hall of Ceremonies, now the Palace Shop, was used for smaller gatherings by the Empress during weddings and baptisms. The beautiful paintings hanging on the walls show the elaborate wedding festivities of Maria Theresa's oldest son and heir, Joseph, upon his marriage to Princess Isabella of Parma. Each painting shows an event from the extensive celebrations and captures an array of important characters from 18th century Vienna. What's more, If you look very closely at one painting in particular, you can see the child prodigy Mozart, who, as we already know, was so loved by the Habsburg court, and Maria Theresa had him added to this painting, where he sits between his mother and father. Mozart regularly came to the Schönbrunn Palace to play for the Empress and her family, and if you walk through the Rosa rooms, named after Joseph Rosa, the landscape artist who decorated them, you'll find the very spot where 6-year-old Mozart sat at the piano to play for the Empress for the very first time. The ceilings are beautifully decorated with violins and trumpets, and the rooms are filled with the most elegant furniture. Mozart's father wrote that after his performance, Wolfgang leapt into the Empress's lap, put his arms around her neck and smothered her with kisses. And as you gaze around you, it's not difficult to imagine what a unique occasion this must have been. Naturally, any summer residence should come with impressive grounds, and the gardens surrounding the palace can be guaranteed to delight you. Gazing up from the palace, your eyes will be drawn to the top of the park, crowned by a magnificent gloriette which offers stunning views across Vienna. Stretching a kilometre across, there are many beautiful sights in Schönbrunn Park, and every pathway leads to a new location ready to be explored. There's a fabulous mock Roman ruin, a zoo, and a 19th century palm house full of exotic and tropical plants. The reign of Maria Theresa was a glorious chapter in the history of the Habsburg Empire, and the Schönbrunn Palace and gardens can lull you into believing that Vienna's past was delightfully untroubled. But as we travel back into the heart of the city, we'll discover that Vienna has had its fair share of tragedies down through the ages. It's hard to believe, looking at Vienna's beautiful streets today, that plague could have been such a huge problem for the city, but there were many epidemics that killed thousands of citizens. Crowded and densely built, with no domestic sewer system, the city's inhabitants were a prime target for disease, and all over Europe, the plague was even known as Viennese death. In the Great Plague of 1679, around 30,000 people lost their lives here, and throughout Vienna you'll find many plague columns, like this one outside the beautiful Maria True Kirche in Josefstadt. They are a permanent memorial to all those who died, and a fascinating part of Vienna's history. When plague struck the population again in 1713, the emperor of the day, Karl V, vowed to build a church if Vienna was spared from another epidemic. True to his word, when the city recovered, he began work on a spectacular church dedicated to Saint Borromeo, the patron saint and protector against the plague. Karlkirche, named after the emperor, is in fact the most magnificent Baroque church in Vienna, and many would argue the most beautiful. Interestingly, the architect responsible for the Schönbrunn Palace, Fischer von Erlach, designed this eclectic masterpiece, borrowing architectural inspiration from Greece, Rome, and the Orient. And although he died before completing the church, his son finally finished it in 1737. The elaborate frescoes that wrap ribbon-like around the two towers feature events from the life of Saint Borromeo, and if you look to the top of the main entrance, you'll see Lorenzo Mattielli's wonderful statue of the saint himself. The whole church is like a fantastic art gallery, and every statue, fresco, doorknob and tile could actually be hung in the world's finest art galleries. It took 21 years to build the church, and fortunately, once Saint Borromeo had taken his place as protector of the city, Vienna was never to suffer from the plague again. Modern-day Vienna, now positively bustling with people and energy, is a far cry from the death and disease of earlier centuries. And for further proof, just 5 minutes to the west of Karlsplatz and Karlkirche, you'll find yourself in the centre of the Nachsmarket. Here, in Vienna's busiest market, you'll be guaranteed a fascinating experience where all manner of produce is on sale. There's plenty to see, and for anyone in search of souvenirs to take home, it's definitely the perfect destination. It's a true taste of what life is like in Vienna. And while on the subject of taste, if you're ready to sample yet more culinary delights, then this historic market will give you plenty of opportunity. A little further away, you can also visit the quieter area of Spittelberg, which was in the past the rather raucous area associated with Vienna's actors and artists. The streets are still crammed with cafes, bars, shops and galleries, but the atmosphere is rather more salubrious than it once was. Wherever you go in Vienna, you'll find culture and beauty, and as dusk falls and the evening begins, this is the perfect opportunity to see the city by night. And as the moon shines over the rooftops, you'll see an even more glittering Vienna come to life. This is, without doubt, a city packed with unforgettable sights, and the beautiful News Rathaus is no exception. This is the new town hall, built to replace the Altes Rathaus that you saw a little earlier, and was built between 1872 and 83. Since then, it's been the seat of the Vienna City and Provincial Assembly, and although it may not have the same power as the Parliament building that can be found across the Rathaus Park, it still deserves its rightful place in the hearts of the people of Vienna. This is as much a result of the incredible beauty of the building as what goes on inside. And as you gaze up the 321-foot-high tower, you'll appreciate why it's so cherished. At the top, look out for the statue of a knight in armour, which has in itself become a symbol of Vienna, just like Friedrich Schmidt's stunning building in its entirety. There's a great deal to see here, and you only have to turn around 180 degrees to find our next destination. On the other side of Rathaus Park, situated directly opposite the News Rathaus, you'll find the equally beautiful Burg Theatre. Inside, you'll find one of the most prestigious stages in the German-speaking world, and to have the honour of putting on a production here is a truly remarkable achievement. Its beginnings, however, were slightly more humble, as the Burgtheater was founded by an archduchess during the reign of the Empress Maria Theresa in an unused ballroom at the Hofburg. When the venture flourished, the original theatre building was constructed on this site, and since then, as you can see for yourself, the Burgtheater has never looked back. The semicircular facade has become somewhat iconic in Vienna, and with its fine frescoes and intricate statues, there are few buildings that can rival the Burgtheater's opulence. Every inch of this theatre is perfect, from the magnificent statue of Apollo that sits high above the front facade, to the doorways down at ground level that invite you to step inside this magical place. Through these doors, a whole host of delights await you, including ceiling frescoes painted by the Klimt brothers and grand staircases in the wings. Of course, if you're lucky enough to see a show here as well, it goes without saying that it'll be an experience you'll never forget. However, should you be more in the mood for opera than a play, you'll be pleased to hear that Vienna is one of the best cities in the world to provide such entertainment. And just seeing the magnificent facade of the Vienna Opera House will tell you that you're in for a treat. History truly was made here, when the Opera House first opened its doors in May 1869 with a performance of Mozart's Don Giovanni. There could not have been a more appropriate choice than the masterpiece of Vienna's adopted maestro, and from this time onwards, the many music lovers of the city no longer had to travel all the way to Paris to hear world-class opera. But should opera not be your particular taste, Vienna still has a great deal to offer, and if it's good old-fashioned fun that you happen to be looking for, then Prater Park is definitely the place to go. On the outskirts of the city, you'll find one of the best-equipped amusement parks in Europe, filled with sideshows, shooting galleries and merry-go-rounds, where the giant Ferris wheel has been providing visitors with amazing views of Vienna since 1897. It was built to celebrate Emperor Franz Joseph I's Golden Jubilee, and known as the Riesenrad, the big wheel has come to symbolise the city of Vienna for many people. It's even been featured in many famous films, including Before Sunrise and The Third Man, and of course, if you have the time to take a ride, the breathtaking views of the city to the south and the Danube to the north will be unforgettable. By now, you'll have realised just how delightful Viennese hospitality can be, and should you have worked up an appetite with a visit to the fairground, a short journey will take you to the old wine village of Grinzing, the most famous example of its type, just out of the city centre. There are inns and restaurants wherever you look, and this is a wonderful place to unwind after visiting the many sights and attractions that Vienna has to offer. Even so, culture is never far away, and if you join the locals to drink wine and eat a hearty meal here at No. 2 Fahrplatz, you'll discover that another of the world's greatest composers, Ludwig van Beethoven, actually lived here in the 19th century. Escaping the hustle and bustle of Vienna's city centre, he wrote parts of his final symphony, the 9th, in this house, and to this day it's considered to be amongst his finest works, which is truly remarkable, because he'd lost his hearing by the time it was complete. While we're on the subject of composers, there's one who's synonymous with Vienna the whole world over, who we've yet to make acquaintance of. The gentleman in question is none other than Johann Strauss, the man responsible for the beautiful Blue Danube Waltz, who, unlike Mozart and Beethoven, was actually born in Vienna. A visit to Stadt Park will bring you into the presence of the man himself, well, the delightful bronze statue to be more precise, framed by a marble relief. It was unveiled on the 16th of June 1921 and ever since has proved to be one of the most photographed sights in all of Vienna and is as lovely to look at as the blue Danube is to listen to. It does also help that Strauss's statue is located in such a beautiful park, and if you have the time to explore, this really is a wonderful place to relax. Vienna's outdoor attractions are an absolute delight, and a walk up Kahlenberg Hill will bring you to another of them, where the view of Vienna will surpass all of those we've already seen. From here you can really get an idea of where the city is situated, between hills and the river Danube. And if the weather is a little cold, you can always sit and enjoy the sights from the cafe that you'll find at the summit. As our time exploring Vienna is drawing to a close, it'll already be almost impossible to pick a favourite attraction from the many we've seen. And as there's every possibility that the best has been left until last, it's a task that's just about to get even harder. Situated at the southeastern end of the city, you'll find the stunning palaces and gardens of the Belvedere, originally built as a summer residence for Prince Eugene of Savoy. As one of the greatest generals ever to serve the Habsburgs, Prince Eugene secured the country's victory over the invading Turks in 1683, and therefore played his part in shaping the Austrian nation as we know it today. It'll of course come as no surprise that such an important man was rewarded with the comforts of a glorious summer residence, and with many grand rooms and extensive gardens, the palaces, the Upper Belvedere and the Lower Belvedere, are together considered to be one of the world's finest Baroque landmarks. As you take in the grandeur of the multi-windowed facade of the front entrance of the Upper Belvedere, you're given but a taste of the wonderful treasures that lie within. The palace's beautifully decorated rooms are filled with unimaginable delights, and even the reception area is wonderful to see, complete with 4 Herculean figures holding up the supporting pillars, bowing beneath the splendour of a ceiling positively alive with friezes and stucco. Climbing the ceremonial staircase, adorned in rich stucco work, will bring you to the upper floor, which houses an array of elaborately decorated rooms, not to mention the greatest treasure of all, a selection of paintings by Gustav Klimt, one of Austria's best-loved artists. The Kiss is without doubt Klimt's most famous painting, and arguably one of the most romantic pictures of all time. And gazing at the lovers on the canvas, embellished with burnished multicoloured geometric shapes and swirls, it's easy to understand why. As is wholly appropriate, the world's largest collections of Klimt are housed within the grand rooms of the Upper Belvedere, as well as a remarkable selection of masterpieces by many other notable artists. It may seem unbelievable, but the gardens outside are nearly as impressive as the palace's interior, and if you dare past the stony gazes of the many sphinxes that fill the park, a short and pleasant walk will take you to the lovely Lower Belvedere Palace. Although you won't find the splendid artwork of the Upper Palace here, it really has some fabulous rooms to explore, where Prince Eugene actually lived, providing a fascinating insight into Baroque interior design. From the statues of the Marble Hall to the mirrored walls of the Golden Room, the sights are magnificent and a true testament to the tireless work that's gone into conserving these palaces, making them such an important landmark in this unforgettable city. Taking in our last views of Vienna, sadly this magical journey has come to an end. At the beginning of the programme, you were warned you'd be left wanting more time in this city, and after seeing just a brief glimpse of the fabulous treasures waiting to be discovered here, your first visit to Vienna is guaranteed not to be your last. Wandering through magnificent palaces and gardens, peeping into the residences of long-gone Habsburg emperors, and of course empresses, will ensure a memorable experience, as will retracing the musical steps of the famous composers who made the city of Vienna their own. Add to this the vast array of wonderful buildings, museums, statues, markets and cafes, and you'll find there's almost too much to take in, as the hardest part of any trip will be leaving any of them unseen. Vienna has so much to offer, and whatever interests you, whether it be music, art, history, fine architecture, spectacular views, or simply fabulous coffee and pastries, the one thing you can be absolutely certain of is the fact that you'll never be disappointed or even tire of visiting this truly remarkable city.